Once again, welcome to the Unshakable Foundation meeting of Cocaine Anonymous. This is a main share meeting, and today it's with great pleasure, lots of gratitude, that I'm welcoming Matthew H, all the way from Buffalo, who's come to share around 40 minutes around steps 10 and 11, after which we'll open up for Q&A. So Matthew, thank you so much for coming today, and with that, it's over to you.
How are you? Hey, everybody. My name is Matthew Hydock, and I'm a recovered alcoholic from Buffalo, New York, USA. I'm setting a timer for myself right now, so just bear with me 1 second, because once I get lathered up and rolling, sometimes I lose track. But here we are, guys. Super excited to be here. I love Cocaine Anonymous. I'm a real alcoholic and a hard drug user. I'm going to say that right from the jump. When I got in some trouble with this tax department and lost my pizzerias, and I could no longer afford the cocaine and the Loratabs, and I just quit cold turkey, was able to stop on a non-spiritual basis. And I used piles, but I couldn't stop drinking. But I love the fact that you guys are there, that Cocaine Anonymous is there. There was 2 guys that I was sponsoring in AA, and I had this sense that they were real cocaine addicts and hard drinkers, but they kept sticking around AA and they kept relapsing. And I encouraged them to start this meeting of Cocaine Anonymous or DAA. I was encouraging them to do something, right? They weren't happy with the other 12-step fellowship that was offered, but I encouraged them. And I'll tell you what, they have 4 or 5 meetings a week now, and they're like 70 strong, and they're just kicking butt and taking names, and people are getting well in Cocaine Anonymous. Because I think a lot of times in Alcoholics Anonymous, it's difficult for those guys to come in and they hear my story and they're like, yeah, I'm that. And they believe it's going to work. But somewhere in the back of their head, they have that lurking notion that I'm different. So it might work for you, but it's not going to work for me. So I love the fact that Cocaine Anonymous has been blowing up and you guys and everybody has a place to be, right? But I'm coming at you as a real alcoholic, a real recovered alcoholic. And I know sometimes saying recovered alcoholic, I love that Young and Rach both introduced themselves as recovered addicts, right? I know sometimes that stirs controversy, but it's nothing we made up, guys. It comes right out of page 90 in the book Alcoholics Anonymous. It's 16 different times in the first 164 pages, right? But on page 90 in the book Alcoholics Anonymous, it says, sometimes we wait till he goes on a binge. The family may object to this, but unless he is in a dangerous physical condition, it's better to risk it. Don't deal with him when he is very drunk unless he is ugly and the family needs your help. Wait for the end of the spree, or at least a lucid interval. Then let a family member ask him if he wants to quit for good and if he would go to any extreme to do so. If he says yes, then his attention should be drawn to you as the person who has recovered. Period. I get well here. That's the hope, guys. We get well in Alcoholics Anonymous. Cocaine Anonymous, right? And I had this buddy of mine, and he does this great analogy about recovered, right? He says, listen, man, if I get shot in the arm and I go to the doctor and they do surgery and they pull the bullet fragments out and they put together the tendons or ligaments or whatever they do and they sew me up, in about 2 weeks, I'm recovered from that gunshot wound, but I'm not bulletproof, right? I'm recovered. I'm recovered from a hopeless state of mind and body. And if I continue on with the spiritual actions that I'm going to talk about in step 10 and 11, and then work with people in step 12, I can stay in that state of grace for eternity. I can have true freedom, and it's not on my back anymore. So my name is Matthew Hydock. I am a recovered alcoholic. My home group is the Soul Purpose Group. We meet on Thursday evenings live in Buffalo, New York. We also have a Zoom meeting on Sunday evenings, and it's probably way too late for you guys. It's 7:30 p.m. Eastern time. So if I'm doing my math correct, that's like midnight or something out there. I don't know, but it's late. But we're a 3 Legacies home group. We're active in all 3 legacies of Alcoholics Anonymous. We're heavy in service. We talk about the big book and only the big book at our meetings, and we truly believe in practicing the traditions inside of our home group. And my wife is a sober member of Alcoholics Anonymous as well. We practice traditions in our family. Like these are principles that are a way of life for us that give us this freedom. I started drinking probably when I was 13, 14 years old, just periodically, you know. Um, and then when I was 15, I got this girl pregnant, and my mom told me, listen, if you're old enough to breed, you're old enough to get an apartment, get out of here. And not having any parental supervision or anything like that, I just started drinking almost daily by the time I was 16, 17 years old. And my alcoholism quickly progressed. Uh, I was in the restaurant business, and I ended up buying a pizzeria in Buffalo when I was 19 years old, and a third by the time I was 21, and a fourth by the time I was 23. And I had arrived, like Bill talks about in his story. I had arrived. I was going to show all those teachers that told me I was going to amount to nothing that now I'm making 4 times as much a year as you could ever even dream of. And I was doing really well in life. And as the more money I made, and the more ego feeding it was, the greater and greater my alcohol consumption got. I I had I just had a crazy life. I had a wife and a girlfriend at the same time, and I was gambling and doing cocaine and drinking, and it was just this whirlwind of a life all the time. And New York State Sales Tax Department, when you sell the pizzas, you collect 8% from the customers, and they have this weird thing that when you collect it from the customers, they want you to give that to them. And I must have missed that in business school. But I got in some bad trouble with the New York State Sales Tax Department, was facing some jail time, and I lost all 3 of my pizzerias, and I was devastated. And when that happened, my drinking took on even greater proportion, to the point where I was drinking a handle, a 175 of vodka a day, every single day. And I got a job with a pizza chain, and lost that job as a result of getting drunk on the job, and a second job and a third job. And, the end of my drinking looked like I'm working for this guy that owns these little coffee trucks. And I was the overnight cook, and I would fill the trucks with food, and the girls would go out and sell the food. And my deal with that guy when I got that job was no drinking on the job. And I promised him, yeah, Brian, I won't drink on the job, because I thought I had the power to pull that off. How many times have we promised somebody we're not going to do it? And I wasn't just lying to him so I could get the job. I really meant it, that I wasn't going to drink on the job, right? Or like my second wife. I remember we went to this wedding, and I started drinking. She told me don't get too turned up that night. And I remember waking up the next morning, and my face was hurting, and I walk into the bathroom, and I look in the mirror, and my whole side of my face is black and blue. And I'm standing in the mirror, looking in the mirror, thinking, what happened? Because I know she's going to come in and she's going to ask questions, right? And I have no answers because I don't remember anything. And I'm looking in the mirror, and she walks in behind me, and she goes, you have no idea what happened, do you? I said, I don't. She said, well, we were dancing, and you decided that you wanted to dance with the maid of honor, and you pushed her husband out of the way and started dancing with her, and he didn't like that too much, and he knocked you out. And you embarrassed me in front of the whole family. And that next morning, I promised her, listen, baby, I swear I'm never drinking again. I'm, I'm done. And I'm telling you guys, hook me up to a lie detector test at that moment, and I pass. Fast forward 2 weeks, right? Busy night at the pizzeria. Someone cuts their hand on a knife. Delivery guy quits in the middle of his shift and throws the food that was in his car out the window. A bar fight in the lobby of my pizzeria. And someone says to me, man, we should go to the bar. It's been a crazy night. In my mind, right? Dr. Silkworth talks about in the doctor's opinion, men and women drink essentially for the effect produced by alcohol. And a lot of people think that's drunkenness. They read that and they think, yeah, I drink to get messed up, right? It's not drunkenness. The effect for a guy like me is I take the bottle of whatever it is, I take a big pull, glug, 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 and the effect for me is this. I just get washed over with a sense of ease and comfort, because I can't deal with life on my own without something. And that alcohol wasn't my problem. Alcohol was really my solution for a long time. I was able to talk to her. I was able to go grocery shopping. I was able to do a lot of things, because in and of myself, without alcohol on board, I'm just a knot all the time. I'm just knotted up. So I promised her I end up drinking again. And when I promised Brian, Brian, I won't drink on the job, I meant it. A couple weeks later, Here I am drinking a bottle of vodka at work. His father shows up, starts yelling at me about something. I put hands on this kid's father. He fires me. My buddy Brian shows up in my house after that. Dude, what's the matter with you? You put hands on my father. What's wrong with you? Brian, I don't know, drinking. And he pulls some money out of his pocket. He's like, here, I want you to go get sober. If you can go get sober, stay sober for 3 weeks, apologize to my dad, you can have your job back. Thanks, Brian. Brian leaves and I finish the bottle of vodka. I wake up the next morning, a little bit of vodka in the bottle. I'm going to AA today, but I'm going to finish this little bit, right? Drink that little bit. I trigger this phenomenon of craving that Dr. Silkworth talks about. And I'm back at the liquor store getting another bottle. Day 2, same thing. Day 3, same thing. But on day 3, Brian shows up at my house. He's like, dude, you didn't even make it 3 days. And he had that look of disgust in his face. I don't know how many of us have had somebody that we cared about, that was a friend of ours, that was a parent, that was a kid, that just looked at us with that absolute disgust. Like, why can't you stop? What's the matter with you? And he said, I'm done with you, man. I can't help you anymore. I'm done with you. And he left. And that was really the beginning of my last run of drinking, right? I had stopped at AA, when I was 19 years old and 25 years old and 28 years old. And here I am at 39 years old and I can't stop drinking no matter what. And I went to AA meetings, and I don't want to make it sound like I came to AA and just struggled through it. I came and someone would tell me, just don't drink no matter what, put the plug in the jug, think the drink through, right? All those things that simply, folks, they are not in the program of Alcoholics Anonymous, Cocaine Anonymous. They're not in there anywhere. It's just not in there. It's made up. One day at a time. You cannot, if anybody here can find one day at a time in the first 164 pages, I will buy you a pony. But it's not in there. It's simply not in there. My book, it says in several different places, I must concede fully to my innermost self that I'm alcoholic. In another spot, it talks about I must have no lurking notion that one day I can drink like a normal man, right? Dr. Bob's Nightmare, he talks about, are you done drinking liquor for good and all? That reading I just read on page 90, does he want to stop for good, right? We're here if you want to stop for good. Nobody offered me that kind of talk at the AA meetings I stopped in over those years, right? It was 90 meetings in 90 days. Again, not in the program of Alcoholics Anonymous. I'm not saying that's a bad thing. If you're new and you have no life, no kids, no wife, no job, go to 200 meetings in 90 days. I don't care. But I remember I went to a meeting and I was working like 100 hours a week at my pizzerias. And this old guy, well, if you don't go to 90 meetings in 90 days, you're not going to make it. I'm like, dude, I was lucky to get away for this hour. I don't have 7 hours a week to dedicate to Alcoholics Anonymous right now. So when he told me that, I was like, well, if I'm not going to make it, why am I going to waste 1 hour here? And I just go back and drink. So this end of my drinking, this Brian fires me and I start reevaluating my life. I start looking at the fact that my 86-year-old little Polish grandmother doesn't talk to me, that I have ruined 2 marriages and a relationship with a girl that I was engaged to, that have 3 children that just don't talk to me at all anymore. That my circle of friends was in the hundreds, and now I don't think I can call anybody and get them to come help me with anything. And it just becomes this real bleak thing. And in the book and in A Vision for You, it talks about it. I think it's page 152, I think it is. It says on the top of the page there that we'll get to this place where we can't imagine life without alcohol, and we'll get to a place where we can't imagine it with or without it, and we'll wish for the end. And on the night of my last drink, I took a half a bottle of sleeping pills and a 1.75 liter of vodka. And I was just checking out. I was done because I didn't want to disappoint another woman. I didn't want to disappoint another child. I had all the guilt of all 50 of my employees losing that job the day the pizzeria got closed. I just didn't want to do this anymore. And I remember getting violently ill that night. And I don't know how long it was that I slept. In those last days you're drinking, you look at the clock and it's 6 o'clock and you're looking out the window trying to figure out, is that 6 a.m. or 6 p.m.? Like you just don't know what's going on. And I was angry that I was awake. And I look over and there's that much vodka left in the bottle. And back then I didn't know what it was, but I felt like there was a barrier between me and that bottle, and I couldn't pick up the bottle. I ended up going to a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous that day, and get to the meeting, and the woman that's running the meeting asked if anybody has a topic, and the first woman talked about how she can't get her cat to use the litter box, that it's peeing on the carpet and peeing on the couch and peeing everywhere. And we talked about cat piss for about a half hour, and then this guy had a snowblower, and I know the woman in Belize doesn't care about the snowblower story, but this guy lives in Buffalo, New York, and we get 6 feet of snow in one storm. You got to have a snowblower that works. So this guy talked about his snowblower, and guys offered him advice on how to fix his snowblower. And I get up and I leave the meeting. And I know Alcoholics Anonymous doesn't work, because I feel worse now. I know how to get my cat to use the litter box and how to fix my snowblower, but I don't know how to stop drinking. I get down to my car and I reach in my pocket and I pull out 2 crumpled up $5 bills and 2 crumpled up $1 bills. And I know my bottle of vodka is $11.86, and I'm headed to the liquor store because I know AA doesn't work. I just sat through it and I have no friggin' idea how to stop drinking. And on my way to the liquor store, I called my father, who we had a tumultuous relationship all my life, but I knew he was living in Oklahoma, about 2,000 miles from where I live, and that he was sober for about 20 some years at the time. I told him what I sat through, and he said, "That's not Alcoholics Anonymous. I don't know what that is, but that's not AA." And he turned me on to this guy, Chris R. from Ingram, Texas, that is for the first time in my, I listened to this speech from Chris, and for the first time in my life, like, I thought because I was molested and because my father beat me and because I had to live on my own, and I thought that that's what made me alcoholic, right? I didn't understand that has nothing to do with it, right? That I'm alcoholic because I have a physical allergy and a mental obsession. That's what makes me alcoholic. And Chris in this talk gave me an undeniable case of alcoholism. And for the first time in my life, I understood what was wrong with me, and I was painted into a corner of powerlessness. And on that same talk, Chris, for the first time in my life, offered me hope. My sponsor talks about all the time, we're in the hope business. When you're at a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous, Matthew, your job is not to go to find. When I hear people say, I need a meeting, I hope you need a meeting because you need to go share the hope with somebody that you can get free of this stuff, right? We're in the hope business. My job at an AA meeting is to come and offer hope to somebody, that we understand where you are. We've been where you are. We've walked that path, and we don't anymore because we've had a spiritual experience and we've become recovered. So I listened to this talk from Chris, and Chris paints a picture of alcoholism that I never knew existed, and I knew I had it. And then he offered me hope. Talked about being free, talked about being recovered, talked about bike riding and all the cool stuff he gets to do in sobriety. And I called my father back and I said, man, that was amazing. Where do I find an AA like that? I wish I could talk to that guy. He said, Chris is a friend of mine. I'll shoot you his number, give him a call. I called this guy up that doesn't know me at all. I call him up and, hey, whatever newcomer gibberish I said, right? And he said, buddy, I'm at work. I'll call you back in 5 minutes. And I get off the phone with him. I'm like, yeah, he'll call me back in 5 minutes. Sure enough, 5 minutes later, my phone rings. And this dude that I never met, have no idea who he is. He has no idea who I am. Took 2 hours out of his workday to sit and talk to me about alcoholism, Alcoholics Anonymous, what it is we're supposed to be doing here. And he told me to go to a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous and find a guy that had a beat up big book that was talking about God in the steps and ask him to sponsor me. That's why all of my guys know you better never go to a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous unless you have the instruction manual in your hand. Because we don't know who's going to be looking for an answer. And if you don't have the answer in your hand, where are they going to find it? And sometimes I walk into meetings and I'm the only guy that has a big book. That's okay. I'm going to be here to offer hope to you. So he told me to go to a meeting. I went to that meeting. I found Rob, my first sponsor. And Rob was a big book thumper, just like Chris was. That day, we went to a grocery store chain in the Buffalo area here that has cafes in it. We went there and he read doctor's opinion, Bill's story, more about alcoholism, and there's a solution. We sat there for like 4 hours reading. And I was absolutely certain at the end of that I absolutely was powerless over alcohol, that I'm an alcoholic and I can't do this on my own. And he starts to talk about God. I'm like, hold on, big boy. I don't want to hear none of that crap. And he looked me straight in the eye and he said, well, then perhaps Alcoholics Anonymous isn't for you. And I said, that's kind of friggin' rude. And he said, I'd rather be rude to you than lie to you. He said, there is no God part of Alcoholics Anonymous. He said, you'll hear people say the spiritual part of the program. The program in its entirety is spiritual, Matthew. And if you want nothing to do with it, then we got nothing for you. Maybe you need to go try something else if you have a better idea. And I was like, we talked for a little while longer. He showed me some stuff and we agnostics. He goes, why don't you go home and sleep on it? I'll come to your house tomorrow. He shows up in my house the next day and I'm watching Star Wars, original Star Wars, 1976, right? Obi-Wan Kenobi sitting in his little hut talking to Luke Skywalker about what the Force is. And I'm watching it. Rob starts to talk and I'm like, hold on one second. I love this. I love this scene. Let me watch this scene. And it's Luke Skywalker or Obi-Wan Kenobi explaining to Luke the Force is this energy field that combines all living things that makes the galaxy, whatever he said, right? And Rob says to me when it's done, he goes, you like that idea? I said, what idea? He goes, the Force. I said, yeah, it's a cool concept. He goes, why don't you use that as your higher power? I said, well, George Lucas made that up. He goes, it doesn't matter. He took me to page 47 in our book and he read page 47 to me. And it says, we need to ask ourselves one short question. Do you now believe, or are you even willing to believe in a power greater than yourself? And Rob said, are you willing to believe that there's something maybe out there that's like the Force? I said, yeah. He goes, great. He said, read the next sentence. And he said, the next sentence says, right? Once a man says he does believe or he's willing to believe, we, who's the we? It's the first people that wrote the book, the people that set this thing up for it, right? We emphatically assure you that you're on your way. Upon this simple cornerstone, a wonderful, effective spiritual arch can be built. And he took me to the readings from 60 to 63. We read about the third step. He said, let's get down. Here's this guy. He's trying to hold my hands. I'm like, what's the matter with this dude? He's holding my hands in my house. He's like, just shut up and get down on your knees and let's say this prayer. He pointed me to the bottom of the page and said, what does this say at the bottom of the page? I'm like, next we launched. He goes, you think when one of those ships in Star Wars takes off that they're moving slow or they're moving fast? I'm like, fast? He goes, that's launching. That means we're going to do the rest of these steps quickly. I wrote that fourth step. And I told Young that I was going to talk about 10 and 11, and here I am still in 4. I'm sorry. I wrote that fourth step. I had 168 resentments. I did a fear inventory. I did a sex inventory. I sat with Robin Whitey. We did my fifth step. For the first time in my life, I was honest with 2 men. Went out and made just a boatload of amends. But as Bill talks about on page 14 to 15 in his story, fourth, the alcoholic failed to perfect and enlarge his spiritual life through self-sacrifice and work with others. He would not survive the trials and low spots ahead. And at 3 years sober, having made a bunch of amends and doing an inventory and kind of pretending like I was praying and meditating, I got really sick in Alcoholics Anonymous and I was suicidal again. I ended up at a spiritual retreat in that time of my life, and I got around a bunch of men that talked to me about steps 10 and 11 not being extra credit steps. That in how it works, it says half measures availed us nothing. And they talked to me about doing steps 1 through 8.5 or 9.5 is a half measure and you're going to get no results out of it. And they challenged me to start living with, and a lot of people will call them maintenance steps. I truly believe that steps 10 and 11 and 12 are growth steps. They're not maintenance steps. I know it says in the 10-step promises, the maintenance of our spiritual condition, right? I have to maintain my spiritual condition, but I have to have this growth, right? And here I am at step 10 and 11 with, 15 minutes left? Perfect. You know, this is what it looks like for me on a daily basis. I wake up in the morning, I have a little notebook here. This is my meditation room that I'm in. I have a little notebook here, and in the morning I get up and I grab my coffee. I'm 50 years old now, so if I don't go pee first, I'm not doing anything, but I use the restroom, I grab my coffee, I sit right here in this chair at this table, and I grab my notebook and I write today's date, and I just write bullet points. Work, 2 sponsee calls, speak for Young at 4 o'clock, spend some time with my wife. I have some CPC work to do tonight because we have our committee meeting tomorrow night. And I just write little bullet points, right? Why do I do that, right? Step 10. I'm sorry, step 11, morning time, step 11, right? On awakening. On awakening, we consider our plans for the day. Boom. Considering my plans for the day, right? It goes on to say we ask God for direction if we're unsure. We ask Him to free ourselves from selfish, self-seeking motives, right? And then we go on to the next page, on page 87, in that On Awakening. It says we usually conclude this period of meditation. Well, what do you mean? You were just talking about me thinking about my plans for the day. I thought meditate was that I had to close my eyes and clear my mind of everything and think of nothing, right? Not true. If I grab my 1939 dictionary that I keep next to my meditation table here, if I grab that and I look up the word meditate in a 1939 dictionary, the word meditate means to thoughtfully contemplate. Thoughtfully contemplate. Now, can meditation be Zen, floating off your pillow, not thinking about anything, trying to have whatever? Absolutely. But I think in the context of the morning meditation, step 11, it's telling me to thoughtfully contemplate my day. Think about the 24 hours ahead, right? And that's what I do. So I have the Insight Timer app on my phone. I start a 5-minute timer. I have some like Buddhist music that plays with a bell every 1 minute. And I just get quiet for 5 minutes in the morning. And I think about my plans for the day, inviting God into everything that I'm going to do for the day. Boom, 5-minute timer goes off. I say a couple little prayers, guys that I'm working with, my kids that are out of town, whatever, right? And I'm on my day. And that's right there at that moment. That's where step 10 kicks in. Right there at that moment. I have a woman here in town and she calls it step 10 is like her purse because she never goes anywhere without her purse. Step 10 is like my cell phone. I never go anywhere without it, right? What does step 10 tell us, right? First of all, it tells us we vigorously commence this way of living as we clean up the past. So the moment I start making my first amends, I'm supposed to be working in step 10 as I clean up the past, right? What does step 10 tell me, right? We continue to watch for selfishness, dishonesty, resentment, and fear when these crop up, not if they crop up, when, because Bill Wilson knew when he wrote this that we're human beings having a spiritual experience. I'm going to have human things happen. I'm going to get dishonest. I'm going to get resentful. I'm going to get fearful, right? It's going to happen. When these crop up, we ask God to remove them at once. We talk to somebody immediately. We make amends if we've harmed anybody, and we turn our thoughts to somebody else. And that's just not, that's all day long. That's from the time I leave step 11 in the morning till the time I get back to step 11 at night. All day long. Girl at work yesterday asked me a question. I gave her the answer. She went back to her computer and did the wrong thing and said it didn't work. And I barked. Bah, bah, bah. Bark, 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 right? And I caught myself. Resentment. Boom. Sherry, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have talked to you like that, right? I didn't have to call my sponsor. I didn't have to ask God to remove it. It was a quick one, right? Sherry, I'm sorry. I shouldn't talk to you like that. Come back to my desk. I'll show you how to do it. I'm really sorry. Boom. Step 10 in a nutshell. Think of someone else I can be helpful to. That's it, right? And Bill Wilson, let me go on and talk about the nightly review then, and then I'll talk about this article. You guys got the Language of the Heart book out there, Young? Do you guys have Language of the Heart? So then when I get home at night, I have another app. It's called My Spiritual Toolkit. And it asks me the questions that are on step 11 in the big book when we retire, right? And I take that app and I open it up and I answer the questions. Was I resentful? Was I fearful? Was I dishonest? Was I kind and loving to all? I answer those questions. And when I get to the last question that says, did I pack into the stream of life? Did I see what I could pack into the stream of life? My sponsor has me do a chronology of my day. And I do talk to text. I don't type at all. I talk to text, right? And I'm like, I got up at 5:15. I did my prayer and meditation. I headed off to work. I did this, I did this. And when I'm going through that, sometimes I'm like, oh man, I had fear there. Let me go back to was I fearful question and answer that question because I did have fear. I just didn't think about it. That's why me sitting and just doing it in my head, it doesn't work for me. I have to put this quote unquote on paper, right? I have to put it in this app. It helps me to really inventory my day, right? I was at a men's spiritual retreat this weekend, and I was the keynote speaker on Saturday night, and I swore several times from the podium. And my sponsor is a big guy that, like, listen, Bill and Bob set an example for us. They showed us exactly how to do it. None of their talks will you ever hear them swear. That's the bar that's set for us. And I was beating myself up, right? And I put it in my inventory and I'm beating myself up. But then when I read the rest of the instructions on step 11, we be careful not to slip into morbid reflection, right? I'm a human being. I made a mistake. When I go speak at Unshakable tomorrow, I'm going to try not to swear. I ask God to remove it, right? The funny thing is in step 7, right? We say, God, take all of me, the good and bad, remove from me every single defect of character which stands in my way of my usefulness to you and my fellows. And maybe, and I'm not saying he did, I'm not using it as a cop out. Maybe God leaves that cursing there sometimes because someone needs to hear me say F bomb. Maybe, right? When I'm getting down and dirty with some brand new guys at the treatment center, maybe they need to know we're not all stiff necks. So maybe God leaves that because I asked him to remove everything that stands in my way of my usefulness. Maybe that's useful to him. I don't know. I can try the best I can, but I don't beat myself up when it does. I look at it, I'm like, okay, next time I'm going to try to do better, right? And I don't think I've sworn yet today. Maybe I did. I don't know. I'll have to go back and listen to the recording. But I get these activities, man. And I'm just telling you guys, since year 3, when I was ready to hang myself, and year 11 and change right now, with doing an invite, and I'll tell you, over the last 8 years, I may have missed 20 nightly inventories. I may not have meditated 50 times. And I'm not saying that to brag. I'm just saying when I do this stuff, when I actually, my sponsor talks about come all the way in and sit all the way down, do what we do. When I do that stuff, guys, the freedom I have, I don't know what it is, but I love my wife more. I'm a better father. I'm a better employee. I'm nicer in traffic. Is it coincidence or is it God really working through me, right? Am I inviting God into every fiber of my day? Or, and I hope this isn't offensive to anybody, but I started inviting God into the bedroom with my wife and I when we're being intimate. And we have a better connection as a result of that. I challenge you, if you have a spouse, if you're invite God into your bedroom. It talks about in our sex inventory not to be used lightly or loathed, right? Our sex powers are God-given, right? Can I invite God into every nook and cranny in my life? And that's, I think, what step 10 and 11 really are about, getting God into every single nook and cranny in my life. And I know a lot of people will talk a talk and then they come home and they step on a Lego and kick the cat. And I invite you guys I'll give you my wife's phone number, call her. Come on my Soul Purpose group meeting on a Sunday evening. Talk to my fellow home group members. This is a way of life that gives me the true freedom. And in that and doing that stuff, there's nothing I can do but help other alcoholics. I talk to my sponsor has this requirement that I go somewhere once a week where I don't want to end up. So I'm at this treatment facility every Monday night, 6 o'clock without fail. Unless I'm out of town, I'm there. Sponsoring a bunch of guys in there right now. And I talk to these men all the time about the 12 steps are a process that turn me into a man that God intended me to be. Christy, they turn you into a woman that God intended you to be. But I have to be all in. Half measures availed us nothing, right? And if you're sitting here and yeah, I made some amends, but she's a not nice person and he's a jerk. And see, I almost swore there. She's a not nice person. He's a jerk. I hate my job. My kids are a pain in the butt. I'm going to ask you to just listen, guys, just spend 30 days with step 10 and 11. Just spend 30 days with it. There's an article, I mentioned that book, Language of the Heart. There's an article called Take Step 11. I'm encouraging you guys, read this article. It changed my life. Bill Wilson's early writing to the grapevine, right? And he talks about that in there that if we lavish 5% of the time on step 11 that we rightfully give step 12, we will be amazed by the dramatic results. And I'm telling you guys, as a guy at 3 years sober that didn't do any step 10 and 11, which puts me in a place where nobody's asking me to sponsor them because nobody wants what I have if I'm not spiritually connected, right? Maybe I got a good talk, so 1 or 2 guys will ask me. I don't know. But when I'm doing this, when I'm living steps 10 and 11 as a way of life, I said earlier, we're in the hope business, right? Hope business. You want to know why you keep relapsing? You want to know why, I go to this treatment facility and sometimes there will be a guy in there that had been around and had a couple of years. And I always ask him, hey, can I ask you a couple questions? Raw dog, honest, ask you a couple questions. And I always ask them, tell me what you were doing with step 10 and 11 when you went and drank again or used cocaine again or whatever. And without fail, I wasn't. I was backing out of the driveway saying, yo, God, come with me today. That was it. We agnostics, I think it's 7 or 8 times that the word prejudice or prejudiced are in there, right? I'm asking you, I'm challenging you guys. Lay aside your old prejudices about meditation and prayer. Set them aside, put them on the shelf. You can always go back and grab them like a warm blanket that you want to snuggle up to, right? And set your prejudices down for 30 days. Try meditation. Try prayer. Try living step 10 and 11. Do I have like 2 minutes and 45 seconds? Is that what I see on the clock still? Okay. Try living prayer and meditation. Step 88 in our book. I think a lot of people miss this because it's like that end of one chapter into the next chapter kind of page, right? It says, it works. It really, let me back up. As we go through the day, we pause when agitated or doubtful. We ask for the right thought or action. We constantly remind ourselves that we are no longer running a show, humbly saying to ourselves many times each day, thy will be done. We are then in much less danger of excitement, fear, anger, worry, self-pity, foolish decisions. We become more efficient. We don't tire so easily, for we are not burning up energy foolishly as we did when we were trying to arrange life to suit ourselves. It works, it really does. We alcoholics are undisciplined, so we let God discipline us in the simple way we have just outlined. Guys, these are not just suggestions. If you go to page 29, it says further on, clear-cut directions are given, right? In another spot in the book, it says to show other alcoholics precisely how we have recovered is the main object of this book. Guys, these are clear-cut directions for our life. These are disciplines that get me to a place of freedom, and you can have that too. All you have to do is use these principles. Live this as a way of life. We get the freedom. I see 1 minute left, and I'm going to close with this reading. Page 181 in the US book. It's End of Dr. Bob's Nightmare. I'm not sure if it's the same page over there in the UK, but it's the end of the last page, last two paragraphs of Dr. Bob's Nightmare, all right? If you think you're an atheist, an agnostic, a skeptic, or have any other form of intellectual pride which keeps you from accepting what's in this book, I feel sorry for you. That's one of our co-founders saying it, guys. Don't be stubborn. Don't let prejudice keep you away from it. Right? Search out a spiritual answer. If you still think you're strong enough to beat the game alone, that's your affair. What he's saying there is if you got something else you think you can do to stop, go try that. Because if you got any other option in your head, if you have a third door that you think is going to work, go do that. Because we're here for the guy that's absolutely convinced that there is no other way. Guy and girl. I'm sorry, ladies. He goes on to say, and I know I just ran out of time. I'm wrapping it up, I swear, guys. He goes on to say, but if you really and truly want to quit drinking liquor for good and all, do you want to be done? Not this one day at a time. I'm just not going to drink today. Maybe I'll drink tomorrow. No. Do you want to be done drinking liquor? Do you want to be done smoking crack or snorting cocaine for good? But if you really and truly want to quit drinking liquor for good and all, and sincerely feel you must have help, we know we have an answer for you. It never fails. If, right? If you go about it with one half the zeal you have been in the habit of showing when you were getting your next drink. Think about all the effort you put in going to the ATM and getting more money and going to the Coke dealer or going to the bar and getting the drinks and making sure you had enough to make it through the night and all the stuff we put in. Put one half of that effort into your sobriety, into writing a 4-step, doing a 5th-step, making your amends, prayer and meditation, helping other alcoholics, and you can have the freedom that I'm shouting about. Thank you for inviting me, Young. I hope I did you proud.
Lovely, great stuff. Always good to hear you, Matthew. We're so grateful for you coming tonight. That was great. So I love this part of the meeting also. We're now going to open up. Look at all those hearts there. We're now going to open up for Q&A session. So if you'd like to ask Matthew a question, please use the raise hand function. Question time, your question time. You've got 2 minutes to ask a question. When your time's up, you'll see a timekeeper. There we go on the screen. Please bring your question to a close. So we've got a couple of hands up. So we'll start off with Daniel. Please come on in, Daniel.
Thanks very much. I'm Daniel Benedict. Thank you so much for your share, Matthew. I definitely needed to hear that tonight. Generally, it was amazing from the start to finish. I took a lot from it, especially about prayer and meditation. For me, prayer and meditation, I've just done my step 4. So prayer and meditation coming a lot this last few days. So yeah, prayer and meditation is one of the best things I never really used to do before I came into the room. So yeah, thanks for that. My question really is wait, so I started my step 4. What would you give advice on really with someone who is doing their step 4? Obviously, because honesty is one of the main things that we need to do, but just any pointers or anything you can help me out on, I appreciate that.
This is like, I have a lot of soapboxes in AA, but this is one of my biggest things, man. A lot of people in Alcoholics Anonymous will say, "Oh my God, I'm writing my 4-step, and it's so scary," and people make it sound like it's this arduous task, right? Just realize that all the stuff you're going to put in column 2 has already happened to you. And all the stuff you're going to put in column 4, you've already done to other people. You're just doing a book report on your life. You're just putting facts down. That's it. You're not going to discover anything new that happened to you or anything new that you did to somebody else. You're going to see it in black and white. It's just an inventory, man. It's like the grocery store guy going to the cooler and doing an inventory. He doesn't go to the cooler and look at the milk and see it's bad and be like, well, it's because the delivery guy came late and it sat on the truck too long. No, man, we're just doing facts here. What happened to me, what I did to people, let's move on. Fear inventory, super simple. Sex conduct inventory. You know, a lot of people, I had this guy I was sponsoring, I had this guy I was talking to, he had a woman sponsor. He's like, oh, my woman sponsor won't hear my 5th step because she doesn't want to, or hear my sex inventory, so I got to share it with somebody else. Guys, it's not about the act of sex. It's not. If you're right in that, you got it wrong. It's about how I treat people in these intimate relationships. So my suggestion is just write it. Just do it. Don't be scared of it. There's nothing new you're going to find. And the freedom that the palpable freedom that you actually get from writing that fourth step, doing that fifth step, and having that ammunition to go out and make amends, that's the meat and potatoes until we get to this prayer and meditation, guys. Don't be scared of it. Just do it. Please. I hope that answers your question.
Lovely. Thank you, Daniel. Thanks for your question. Before we go to Isaac, we've got one that's been sent. The spiritual life is not a theory. We have to live it. What does this mean to you, Matthew?
I mean, I think that I talked about it, right? Like, look at me, my own experience at 3 years sober, no spiritual life, no prayer, no meditation, not trying to help other alcoholics, and I'm suicidal because I don't have my, alcohol wasn't really my problem. Alcohol was my solution to the problem, which was self, right? I put alcohol on board and I get rid of self for that few moments, right? So look at my life at 3 years sober, wanting to hang myself, no spiritual life. At that time, it was just a theory to me, and I'm falling apart at the seams. But here I am. And again, guys, I'm serious. I'll put my wife's number in the chat. Any one of you can call and ask her, does he really do this or is he full of poop? Right? It's not a theory. I have to live it. And I get the true freedom when I live that. I hope that answers your question.
Question. Next up, Isaac, come on in.
Hi, yeah, thank you. Hi, I'm Isaac, very grateful recovered addict. Matthew, thank you so much for an amazing show. It was so good to hear you and just what you were talking about in step 11, that contemplative reflection and writing a bullet point for your day. I'm gonna start trying that. My question is, you talked quite a lot about that side of step 11, that quiet reflection. I just wondered, kind of today and recently, what does your prayer life look like, and how do you kind of explore that side of things at the moment? Thanks.
No, my prayer life is super simple. I laid it out for you guys when after my meditation in the morning, I do a couple quick prayers just about maybe a sponsee that I have that's struggling, or my sponsor will have some people in his nightly inventory that he sends me that I know I need to send prayers to. At the end of the day, after I do my nightly inventory, my prayer life is just, God, thank you for another day. Thank you for making me a tool to be useful today. And I don't I don't pray on my knees. Maybe some people think that's heresy. I got a titanium plate in my knee. I just can't get down there. I don't think it's a requirement. When I got new guys and some guys are like, I don't know how to pray, I tell them, hey, just look up at the ceiling and say, fuck. And God knows what you want, man. At the end of the day, just look up in the ceiling and say thanks. If something's going wrong in your day and you need to pray, why? Right? Anything can be a prayer as long as we're acknowledging that presence of deity in our life, right? And I think for me, it's less prayer these days, more meditation and more spiritual seeking, right? And maybe I'm light on prayer. I don't know, but it's effective for me right now. So I hope that helps.
Lovely. Thanks for the question, Isaac.
And I'm sorry for swearing. I just didn't know what else to say in that moment.
Next up, Dominic, come on in. Can you unmute, Dominic?
I can now. Am I unmuted?
You are. Come on in.
Yeah. Thank you, Matthew, for a lovely share. I'm just going to be really vulnerable and honest with you, and in the sense of, so by the grace of God, I'm 11 years clean and sober, and I announce myself as recovered from a hopeless state of mind. But I innately feel that there's something fundamentally flawed with my program. My triangle's okay. I'm working. I'm active in service, unity. I'm a personal recovery to the best of my ability, i.e. my 10 and 11. But I'm sending over my review every night. I'm praying every day. I'm praying every morning, and I've started to pray two-way prayer. I've fallen asleep in recovery. I've been suicidal. I understand that pain at 4 years and 7 years when I was in the pandemic, and I wanted to set my own life on 2 occasions, but I don't feel like I'm free. You know, I'm taking men through the work. I'm about to start work with a man next week, but there's something within my life does not feel a sense of freedom, and I guess I wondered if you had any suggestions, what might be missing. I work with addicts. I'm a father. You know, my life's full. I'm blessed beyond anything I could have ever comprehended.
I'm going to suggest, and it's worked for me. Like I get stagnant with my idea of God, right? Like it gets static, and I'm no longer seeking, and I'm just on this level plane of God is this, and I just gotta. That's what I got, right? And what I found in those moments, ask somebody, what's a good spiritual book for me to read? Let me get into The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle. My sponsor, you know, I've been watching a lot of Neil deGrasse Tyson. I don't know if guys know who that is, but I've been watching a lot of reels on Facebook of Neil deGrasse Tyson, and he's constantly challenging the idea of God. And I have these real conversations with my sponsor, like, is this all BS? Am I just is it a self-fulfilling prophecy? Am I saying that God works so it just seems to be working in my life, right? And my sponsor always has some suggestion for me, and he just suggested this book for me the other day. It's called The Language of God, right? And it's about the scientists that unlocked the genome of the human DNA, and how he talks about how he came to believe in God. And I just think it's spiritual seeking, right? It talks about in our book several times those who seek him earnestly, right? So am I still seeking God, or am I just on a plateau where I know what God is and I'm just moving along life with this mundane thought of what God is, right? Or am I really seeking? Am I picking up? Am I going back into the Sermon on the Mount book that they used before they had the big book? Am I really studying that? Am I open? Listen, guys, I'm not a Bible guy. I'm not a Jesus guy. That's just me. But I can read spiritual literature and it means a lot to me. So I just challenge you to find something new to challenge your idea of God, and look to see, our book tells us, look to see where religious people are, right? See what they have to offer, right? I picked up a book on Islam because I don't understand it and I wanted to find out what was going on. I got books on Buddhism. My bookshelf over here is just chock full of all kinds of books because I don't ever want to think that I have the answer, because I always want to be still seeking. And if I get to a place, and maybe someone has, and I'm not taking a shot at you, for me personally, if I get to a place where I think I figured God out, then why do I need to seek anymore? And it's in the seeking that I find him, that I find a greater, deeper relationship with him, that I have a better understanding, that I see the absolute complexity of it, right? So my sponsor said, get this book. I went on Thrift Books. I ordered the book. It got to me. I read the introduction yesterday. I'm like, holy, wow, okay. New way to look at it, right? So maybe that's it. Maybe you just need to challenge maybe you have a current old idea of what God is, right? Like we come in here with these prejudices, right? Maybe I have a new prejudice that I believe this is what God is, and I'm stagnant. So I just challenge you to look and see if there's something else you can be. And I'm not saying turn your back if you have a religion. Please don't think I'm telling you you're wrong. I'm just saying, can you find a deeper understanding of your higher power? I hope that helps.
Great stuff. Thanks for your question, Dominic. Next up, Ollie, come on in.
Hi, Molly. I'm an alcoholic and an addict. Thank you, Matthew, for your share. When I'm doing my nightly review, I kind of noticed that I'm not putting a lot down, but before I've been afraid in the day. I just wondered if you could give me some examples of where you're afraid in the day. Thank you.
What I find is so I told you guys I spoke at this retreat called Man Up, and two of my absolute heroes did the retreat over the weekend. Steve Lee and Ralph White did the retreat over the weekend, and I had all kinds of fear about going up to the podium, right? Because I'm with these two guys that are 42 years sober and 37 years sober, and I look at the fears in my daily life. I looked at when I got done talking and I said to my wife, I said, I can't believe I swore like 5 or 6 times from the podium. And she's like, well, let's unfold that. What is it? What was it really? And it comes down to fear. Fear that I don't want my sponsor to be disappointed in me because he's a guy that is of principle, won't swear from a podium, talks about that Dr. Bob and Bill Wilson set this level of expectation from us because they never swore in any of their talks, right? So if I'm resentful or if I'm dishonest, what was the fear? You know, I had an incident, I don't know, a few months ago. I went to a store and they have no cashiers at the store. It's all self checkout, and I go up to the self checkout and I scan the one thing that I bought, and I went to scan the other thing and it didn't scan. And I'm like, well, screw them. If their machine's broken, you know, that I don't have to pay for it. And I left the store. And I got home. And that thing sat in my living room for a couple of days, and I was looking at it every day. The reality is, I was afraid that I had to spend the money. That's why I was dishonest, right? I didn't want to spend the money. So I think we can find fear behind everything. I think that the biggest bait and switch, if you guys know what bait and switch is, right? Bill Wilson says resentment is the number one offender. I think he said that because if he said fear is the number one offender, most alcoholics would have stopped there and be like, I'm not afraid of nothing, right? But I think behind every resentment, behind every, you know, everything that I did in my sexual conduct, in how I treated people, just all the stuff in my life, everything behind it is fear. So I think if you look behind, where was I selfish? Where was I dishonest? Right? You'll find fear there, right? Where was I selfish? I find that I was selfish in a situation. Why was I selfish? I was selfish because I was afraid I wasn't going to get what I thought I was entitled to. Right. So I think if you unpack that, and then honestly, guys, sometimes I don't have any fear in my day. I do my inventory and I'm like, where was I fearful? And I'm like, and I sit there for 2 minutes. I'm trying to think of it and I have no fear. And I go on and I write my little detailed end of the day and I still don't see any fear. Maybe God's removed the fear from me for that day, and let's claim that victory. Let's put a flag on that victory of a day with no fear, right? But I think if you look at any dishonesty, any resentment, you'll find fear behind it. So I hope that helps.